Welcome to the Happy in the Mess podcast. We are your hosts, Marlena, Cheri, and Matthew. We are therapists and coaches, and we want to share our own stories with you, as well as the wisdom, insights, and tips we've learned along the way. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Today, we're talking about play. It's a topic I've struggled with for a long time. In fact, when I read Brene Brown's book where she talks about play, I had to look up the definition, then reread the definition, then write it down. And I wish I could say that that definition stuck with me, but I've had to go back to that definition multiple times. Play seems to be a little bit hard for me to do. I'm excited to talk about this with Matthew and Marlena today. I know they have insights and wisdom that will help all of us make some connections and have insights that make it easier to understand and do fun. Before we dive in, please remember to like, share, rate, review, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen. If you discover, as I have, that either of these experts are brilliant and you want to know more of and you want more of their magic, you can reach out to them directly. Let's hear how. Marlena, tell our audience where they can find a little of your magic dust.
Well, you can go to coachmarlena.com and sign up for my meditations there, and also book a consult call if you'd like to work with me. I work with spiritual singles looking to thrive in their life and get rid of their past baggage.
Thank you so much. Matthew, how can those who want to join your tribe find you?
They can find me because this is the way.
For those who can't see him, he has put on a mask, and I wish I could say what kind of mask, but
Mandalorian.
Thank you.
I love play. I'm excited for this topic. For those that can't see the background, I have all sorts of collectibles slash toys. So absolutely. I love it because it helps us with so much. And I know we'll get into that. But if people want to work, if they enjoy playing, particularly in therapeutic ways, so they can find me at matthewemorgan.com. And I work with neurodivergent misfits and people that don't fit in and people who are trying to struggle with spirituality and all this kind of messiness. And we just help really just support that and see what's there. And you can also find me on my socials at Misfit Refuge.
Yeah, I know play is one of your love languages. Is that how that goes?
It has developed that way. Yes. So it's definitely been a process. It was not, my kid self would not agree with that. So.
Yeah. So you're saying that can be cultivated. I'm going to tuck that away as one of my insights for today. You can find me at cheritimcare.com, or if you want to hang out with me, you can come to the Facebook Date Night community. And I work with disconnected couples who feel like they're in roommate syndrome, and I help them have the deeply connected relationship they're looking for. So let's dive into this topic. Let's just start with the basics here. How do you define play?
I think of play as any source of fun, where there's no real goal. I mean, you can be competitive in play, but I don't think there's any real thing to achieve, no task to like cross off your list. It's just something that engages that fun mechanism of the brain where I'm just doing this because it's enjoyable.
I would agree, and it's we can make things play. Obviously, there's a lot of gray areas we work through this of what can be fun. Clear back to the playing the cleanup game. If you want to turn it into a competition or turn it into something fun, and then all of a sudden cleaning up, which is work, it's now become play. It's been something that releases dopamine. It makes us feel better, puts a smile on our face, which I think are all those I think quintessential aspects of play.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, what you just said is probably where I get hung up. One of the definitions, one of the elements of fun is that it's purposeless. And I can take work and turn it into fun, but if it's purposeless, then that seems like a whole different thing. So you guys have what is your understanding of is like the idea of it being purposeless versus turning work into something that's fun?
I have an issue with that definition. Like I don't know that I can totally accept the idea that it's purposeless, because even as a kid, something that is fun, putting your dinosaurs out and eating each other, like, or I know as a kid we had these, I wish I could go back and remember what they were, but they were these toys that ran on little zip lines. And my brother and I we would run zip lines all across the bedroom. It looked like this just maze of yarn and string. But it looks purposeless maybe to somebody from the outside, but inside, I mean, there's cognitive development going on. There's physical development. There's dexterity. There's emotional stuff. There's social skills as we learn to play with one another. I mean, I don't think anything that we do is necessarily purposeless on this. So I might nudge back, like clear back on the first definition part, you know.
No, and I agree with Matthew too. I was just doing a little bit of research on play, in preparation for this topic, and it is an antidepressant. I mean, like being playful helps you learn flexibility, empathy, impulse control. I mean, you learn how to play well with others. There's a lot of like social, developmental, intellectual, and just emotional benefits of play. So it's not purposeless. Just because I'm not like getting groceries doesn't mean that it's not absolutely necessary for my well-being in a multitude of ways.
Necessary. Okay, got that. Okay, so because we get benefits from it, it's not purposeless. So you guys have been using play and fun almost interchangeably. Are
Mm.
they the same thing?
Why not? I mean, I don't know what the technical definition is, and I'm certainly not the expert in the play. And for our listeners, you can look at the National Play Institute for more information on some of this. But I mean, yeah, I think they can be the same thing. I mean, and it doesn't have to take a whole ton of time either. I just think about like the playful nature I have with my cats between sessions, for example, or it doesn't have to be like this long drawn out thing. Like I love tennis, right? And for me, that's a lot of play. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of competition. I really adore it, and that takes hours and hours. But I mean, I don't get to do that very often. But yeah, I don't think it necessarily, and that works me out. I mean, that does all these other things for me, right? um but yeah, builds self-esteem, helps me make friends. Those of you who like sports, yeah, know what I'm talking about. What would you say, Matthew?
I'm almost hearing this. It almost feels like this is a definition from the outside rather than from the inside. That this is somebody who's perhaps observing and saying, well, this clearly has no purpose to it. Maybe I'm going to go completely opposite of Marlena, because tennis for me is neither fun nor play.
It's all about attitude, right?
It's a lot about chasing the ball wherever I just happen to launch it, because I lack the gene, the gentle finesse that you need for tennis. It just, that ball goes flying, right? But my son and I, we play D&D together on Dungeons and Dragons. We play on Sundays, and we've got this great group that we meet with. And for some people, they're going to look at that and say, "Oh, look, that has no purpose. It's just dull. You're just sitting around. You're not creating physically tangible anything." So again, it almost feels like that's a definition from the outside, but from the inside, we are having fun. We're laughing. We're coming up with creative ways of doing things. We're learning numbers. All these great things. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so play and fun are very subjective. And what one of you might think is play or fun, the other might think is drudgery and torture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I also wonder if play is more an action and fun is a feeling. Am I trying to draw too much of a line between them?
No, I think that's sounds very valid. I guess my first initial thought with it, is yeah, play is something we do. Fun is something we feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so how do we get more, well, play and fun in our lives?
Mm-hmm.
We need to give ourselves permission. It is so hard. I think depending on how we're raised, a lot of us are. Notice how this is a theme. Almost every episode, we're like, this depends on what your parents said to you, and if you were the kind of if it's the kind of family nucleus where you have to work, you have to be productive, you have to show something, then that carries through. Exactly, right. That carries through. I very much was the same way. I was raised by a lawyer and a originally was a nurse, and then she went back to school and got her accounting degree because those are so complementary in their skill sets. Not really, but work was, it was always the thing, and you had to be productive and you had to keep pushing things through. So part of this is just giving permission to say, you know what, I can back down and I can do something that is fun, that's playful. And I know this kind of counteracts a little bit, but it still has a purpose. It still has a meaning for it. So it's not wasted time. But we want to make sure we're intentional about it. And again, I have permission to laugh and have fun and do something that maybe other people don't appreciate quite as much.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree with Matthew. This kind of goes back to how we were raised, and but you know what? I was raised with a ton of play. I mean, I was more of a kinesthetic kind of player. I love how on the National Institute for Play, there's like they identify 8 different types of like play personalities, and one of them is kinesthetic storyteller. There's a whole bunch in there, um, and and the Joker, like Seinfeld, or the storyteller would be like Oprah. But anyway, I grew up playing and it was so much fun. And it wasn't until I got into like more serious adult stuff that I felt like I didn't have time for it, just because simply the workload felt so heavy that there just wasn't. And it took a little while for me to realize that when I played, I actually became more productive in my working life, and to like carve out time knowing that like that was not time wasted, that actually would help and aid me in the rest of my work. But I would feel guilty. But it for having done it. But I don't think that I actually was raised that way. I think that came later when the workload just got heavier.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't think we yeah, go ahead.
creating time and it's giving permission. I think I wish I remembered the specifics of it. There is a research study that said that at age 8, kids' laughter starts dropping dramatically. And
Isn't that sad?
it drops to like
Oh.
10% of the laughter that they have when they're little. So
Mm.
don't quote me on those numbers, but that's in the right ballpark.
Hmm. Well, and again, the National Institute for Play talks about how some people have gone on to become very isolated, even violent, and because there's a huge absence of play in their life. I think this is actually an issue in our country, like violence in general. And so I wonder, like, how much are we playing as adults? How much are we making time for that? Like, maybe we should bring back some of that, just recreational time, however we conceive of it, because it is. Because also we play with others oftentimes. We're not oftentimes playing alone. That does happen and that can, but as we grow up developmentally, we usually play with other people. And isolation is one of the things that well, contributes to depression and all kinds of other negative things. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and every, I don't want to, I always hate singling out a gender because I know we're going to kind of start a fire, especially being 2-on-1. But
Why?
the
Did we gang up on you?
no, no, yeah, I'm just kidding. No, but it's like, and so it's not saying one in a way of the other. I'm just speaking from maybe a more masculine point of view because that tends to be a little bit more of what mine is, I guess. But like often where we are raised, especially my generation, we were raised with this industry of we need to push through, we need to do things, you can't play, you can't have fun, it's go to work, do this stuff. um and it is very isolating. And going back to Marlena's point, like this is something, even me, like I'm not if you tell me I want to go out and socialize, the answer is no. But if there's a purpose, again, I know we're blurring the line here, right? But if there's a purpose to it, so play is one of those things of like, do you want to get together and play paintball? Do you want to do D&D? Do we want to play a game? Do we want to do something together? That creates more of a connection there. And I think men, especially because we do tend to isolate a little bit more, if we can get into that and get into that camaraderie, there's really a lot of benefits that come from that, that normally
Hmm.
you wouldn't see. You would see more of the isolation.
Hmm. Well, and this sort of speaks to the different levels. Like we have acquaintances, you know, there's a difference between acquaintances, companions, friends, and partners. And on the companionship and acquaintance level, the thing you're doing is more important than the person you're hanging out with. And it's and that there's value in that, because this thing makes me think of Brene Brown's, like, her episode with the three levels of loneliness that they described. There's loneliness on the level of not having an intimate partner to share things with, loneliness on the level of not having friends with whom to share things with, activities, etc., and then the loneliness of not having a shared purpose with people, as well. And you can have one of these really well, have a great partner, but still feel lonely on the level of friendship and purpose. And so I feel like play really fits well into all of these, but it's a great way to start building these other ones. Where you may feel, you know, and if you're not been playing with your partner, that's not fun either. I mean, I feel like play is actually crucial to all of these, and you don't, and they occur at different levels of intimacy or closeness, um, which I think is interesting. And yeah.
Although I could see play being something that you could do with a person of any degree of intimacy with.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's what I'm saying, that sometimes the activity is more important than the person you're doing with. It doesn't matter how close you are. I can go play tennis with a bunch of strangers and have the time of my life and not have any one of their numbers and not be close to them at all, you know, but it's still very good for well-being.
yeah, there's a prominent couples therapist guru who suggests that couples shouldn't do any play without their partner there. Now, while this is a little bit extreme, the logic behind it is pretty profound. We feel positive, we feel happy, and when our partner is with us, when we're doing that, there's this like overflow onto our partner where they get this positive bump by being with us when we're happy, even if we're happy about something else. So I don't go to the extreme that he does, but I do think there's something to, like, that play doesn't necessarily need to be both partners playing. You can get that vicarious, that bonding and bump from your partner's play.
I love
Yeah.
that.
I would anecdotally, I'd agree. I mean, going back to our D&D sessions, you know, my son and I play. We have invited my wife to play, and this is not her jam by any stretch of the imagination. So she would be very miserable if this was something where we could not do it. You know, if we had to do it together, I don't know that she would that this would be the high point of her week. It is the high point of her week because she can sit down and watch shows completely uninterrupted, which I think is probably every mom's dream. Like, like she can take her Sunday nap. She can, you know, watch her wonderful BBC mystery shows that somebody in the house makes fun of occasionally, without any kind of interruption. But I think what you were saying there too, Cheri, is there is a vicarious happiness, and we can, even though we're not together, we can appreciate that both of us are playing in our way, and when we do get that little bump.
Yeah, there's a word from poly communities of compersion. Compersion is the joy that you feel at seeing your partner's happiness.
Mm.
And that applied in the poly field might be different than maybe in a monogamous couple or in a family, but still there is a joy of seeing someone that you care about being happy. And so being able to capitalize on that. All right, so we have been talking about being happy in the mess, being happy in crisis, finding that center and that purpose and meaning, even when things are chaotic or in crisis. So how does play make it easier to handle whatever mess we find ourselves in?
I think play. I'm going to steal Marlena's thunder here just a little bit, but hopefully I'll be able to hand it off to you too, because I think play is really kind of an ultimate mindfulness activity. It's not what you would picture. But a lot of people picture mindfulness as kind of this zeroed, centered, calm thing, but you know the world can be going to heck in a handbasket, and you can sit, you can play and laugh and have fun, and everything just kind of, all of the other stuff that's not in your immediate surroundings can kind of go by the wayside. And it really gives you that chance to develop and focus on what's in the moment. So I think that may be one of those big benefits that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Play as
it
mindfulness, play as presence, like
mhm,
being
Hmm.
present in the moment. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Marlena, what do you think? Does that
I
track
mean,
with play? I know
I absolutely agree with you, Matthew. Absolutely. It does bring you into the present moment. It brings you joy and it kind of increases. I think the ultimate benefit here is you need to increase your foundation of it's like putting money into the bank for insurance or savings. Like as you keep, it's an accumulative effect. Like when your bank is pretty full, you've collected all this insurance or the savings in the form of play, like because you've increased all these positive emotions over time. When crisis hits, you're less likely to fall very far because you're just at a higher place, if that makes your baseline has been raised because you've been taking care of yourself in this way. So, I mean, I think that's true for all mindfulness activities and other things I've talked about on this podcast, like meditation and other things that increase well-being, including having good confidence and all these things. You want to have, you need to build up, and you never know when crisis, because this is life and we're human and things happen. So you never know when that's going to hit. And I'm not saying like start playing now so you can weather the storm. But I mean, essentially, why not play now? And it will help you weather the storm later. And then you'll have other people to draw upon and like a larger community and network. Because again, we're usually not playing alone, and we know what brings us joy and we're quick to seek that out. We're like, oh, I feel terrible. Let me go do this thing that I know lifts me up.
I think also when we're in the middle of crisis, it's easy to become hyper focused on that problem, and everything
Mm-hmm.
else kind of fades to the background. And if you can give yourself permission and space to do something that's fun, it reminds you that the crisis isn't the whole picture. Like there's a whole life that surrounds that crisis, and that crisis is not the even the thing that defines you. It isn't the thing that is the most important.
Mm-hmm. It reminds you that this too shall pass. Yeah.
Yeah. Last episode, we talked about relationship injuries. And so I was thinking about play kind of in comparison to making repairs in a relationship. And so I wanted your take on how you can use play to make those kind of relationship repairs. Last time we talked about apology as a way of making repair, but what about play?
I think
Yeah.
just that safety of being with somebody. Play a lot of times it does come with a set of rules or a set of expectations, norms, maybe is the better way to say that. Not that, we can't go full Calvin Ball and just randomly make up stuff. For those of us who are of the whiter hair persuasion and remember Calvin and Hobbes. But I think it with play, when we play together, it keeps us there, it keeps us connected to the other person, it gives us bridges here. And again, maybe one more anecdote just to and I'm gonna throw myself under the bus, is that my son and I had a relationship injury moment, in which I will fully admit that as a dad I screwed up and reacted incorrectly to something. I know, and I apologize for those of you who thought I was perfect as a therapist, and but made a mistake. And I went back and I listened to our podcast episode on making an apology. Not really, but that's just a shameless promotion to go back and listen to that. I did apologize, but with with a 13-year-old whose emotions are big for himself, angsty. Then like that was the first step of the repair was the apology, but it was getting comfortable with each other again and breaking that ice and that uncomfortableness that came from the wound. And we did that by playing, by having fun. We had this was a fantastic D&D campaign. And I want to pause for a second there too, because D&D, I keep referencing that. In the back of my mind, there's always this flag, because Gary Gygax, who created this, there's some concerns around this being a very heteronormative and um, very racially one-sided system. We've tried to repair on that. So I keep referencing that because that's my normal thing. You can just as easily substitute any kind of tabletop game in there. So maybe that's my one quick apology for those that are sensitive to that or who worry about that. But going back to the main story here, by playing, we Marlena's thing, right? We build up more goodwill towards each other. We build up more comfort and safety. So now there's more data. So now dad is a more safe person, and we're not angry. We don't have to hold this thing over there. And by the end of the 4 hours, we were laughing together. He's talking with me. He's sharing with me. So I mean, it was a good experience, and I think that play really helps with that because it gives us more information and more safety with each other.
Yeah, what I heard you say is repair with the apology and then bond with the play.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that's really what that you think about a wound. We have to stabilize it, and then we have to allow it to heal, and sometimes that's the time that does that. So.
Yeah.
I have often had the experience. This really calls into mind my sibling relationship and how play was often the bridge, was the way to apologize in a sense when that was engaged again, a joke, let's go play, let's go run around, let's do something playful in the pool. And that was a way of like sort of, I mean, we didn't have the skills at the time to use our words to apologize, but the invitation to play and then the response to say yes to that invitation was a way to bridge to repair our relationship injuries at the time.
Yeah. All right, so I'll just throw this in because I see this a lot, especially in couples, but it probably is in other relationships as well, where there will be a relationship injury. And the way that one of the partners tries to deal with it is to play, where they might make a joke or be sarcastic or even maybe tussle a little bit. And it causes a further rupture. So it does sound like that repair needs to be first. Otherwise, the person who is hurt feels dismissed or further injured.
Yeah.
Were you watching Us, or was this just a random reference? Because
I see this a lot in a lot of relationships, and a lot of couples connect through fun and sarcasm, and then they try to use that when they're in conflict with each other. And a lot of times that will just bomb. And you'll just see a couple who's like trying to talk through something, and one of them will throw just a funny or a lighthearted comment in there, trying to lighten the tone, and instead it just tanks. They're like, but I was just playing. I was just trying to lighten the mood. And, so just being careful with that play when
Too
you're,
soon, too soon.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 So basically play is not a cure all, and it doesn't take the place of an actual verbal apology.
yeah.
yeah,
So here we
absolutely.
are back to repairs, back to relationship.
And that reminder, right? Like we need to step through this and maybe even get permission and consent to move through each of these steps as we do this. Cheri, you gave some great information on how to apologize and what apologies need to include. And none of those was be sarcastic, grab them by the shorts or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, then because that wounds more. And at that point,
Mhm.
now you have a second apology to make on top of the first one.
Mhm.
Right.
So working through that, and then yes, the building up, the restructure of the therapy is through play.
Good. Well, thank you so much for both of your wisdom. Any final words you want to share with our audience about play? We
Just for
covered
the
it all.
adults out there. Yeah, well, I mean, just as some extra resources for adults, if you're someone who's struggling with play, I just want you to know that there are, meetup groups and sporting groups and recreational things happening probably in your local community to get involved, look them up and try and get involved in play wherever you are, whatever that looks like, whether it's dance or sport or D&D, that you don't have to be close and intimate to someone in order to play with them.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And that's maybe my big thing too, is just try it. Life it can be very serious, it can be very difficult, and a lot of times we get so locked in that we really can't get a good perspective on things. And a lot of times, you always hear that, like, I'll play later. I'll do this later. And later may not come, later may look different. Um, so to Marlene's point, give something new a try. Use Meetup, try to see who's near you, whether it's writing, whether it's, a physical activity, tabletop gaming, tabletop RPGs. Go down to your local comic store. They will have a list of people. I mean, ours is completely booked up. So there's always stuff going on. You just have to make that little extra step to do it.
Well, thank you so much for that. I do want to mention, Marlena, you mentioned the National Institute of Play, and that seems like a really good resource. I do not recommend that you guys go out and Google adult play. You will end up in topics that maybe are not what we're talking about. Not that it can't be play, because maybe that's the play you're looking for, but if you're not looking for that, it will be a shock.
Yes.
Thank you all for tuning in today. We continue to grow, but it's much easier and faster when you help us along. Every like, share, rate, review, comment, and subscribe hammers away at the almighty algorithm and brings us into the wider view. So we are so grateful for your support. We will see you next week and we'll have a new topic.